Today I'm reviewing Galactic Era, a 4X sci-fi board game of space exploration and domination. It has technology research, exploration, epic space battles, and it also brings its own twists to the 4X genre, but I'll get to that shortly. More importantly for us today, Galactic Era has a solo mode, and that's what I will be reviewing. I have not played the game multiplayer, so please note that this review will 100% focus on the solo experience. Please note that a copy of the game was sent to me by the designer for this review. If you don't want to watch the video, here's a quick summary of my opinion. I'm really enjoying Galactic Era as a solo gamer. It is a solid strategy, space exploration and battle experience with surprising variety in the gameplay, and it fills a void in the 4X genre for solo gamers. It's also clearly a work of passion by designer Channing Jones, and this shows in all aspects of the game. The game of course has its flaws too, which I'll try to explain in this review. As soon as I opened the box, I was impressed by the art, which has a bit of a Wing Commander / Master of Orion feel to it. You can sense the millennia-spanning civilizations and space battles right off the box, with the art of the characters in particular, but also the background storybook and the galaxy maps. I also want to praise the general quality of the cardboard components. All cardboard components look and feel great. The main trackers of players' population in particular are made of thick dual-layered cardboard, and that's really awesome. I can't extend my praises to the plastic miniatures, however, which in my opinion look ugly, if functional. And the functional aspect is debatable too, but I'll get back to that. It took me a while to play my first game of Galactic Era. This was probably one of the most complicated games I ever had to learn. It's a good time to let everybody know that although I have played my share of 4X computer games, I have never played a 4X board game, let alone solo. All of this to say that maybe the initial complexity of the rules in Galactic Era comes from my lack of experience with that particular genre, but also to say that some of my praises for the game might just meet expectations for you if you're a seasoned player of Eclipse or Twilight Imperium. To my knowledge though, neither of these games have a solo mode, so I don't think they're competing here. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. Anyway, the rulebook isn't particularly long or convoluted. It explains things concisely and precisely, but it packs so much information. I was glad that the designer has some helpful videos on their YouTube channel with a gameplay video for the solo mode. I'll leave a link in the description. After my first game, I managed to make an average score, and I was definitely hooked to play again, which is usually a good sign. Galactic Era is a 4X game. You represent a race of aliens and have to expand your civilization through space travel and planet colonization, while maintaining either peaceful relationships with your opponents or be at war with them and destroy their spaceships in combat. Galactic Era is played in 8 rounds. The ultimate goal of the game is to have the most points. Points are acquired by various means, including but not limited to expansion through the galaxy, destroying your opponent's fleets, and so on. How points are awarded depends on the scenario and goals for the current game. An interesting aspect of Galactic Era is that the scenario goes through 3 different phases: light, followed by darkness, then light again. Points are awarded differently depending on the era. Light eras will tend to reward peaceful civilizations, while the darkness era gives more points to aggressive actions. This can guide your overall strategy, but you can also choose to ignore it at your own advantage. Each round is divided in 4 steps. Each step, players act successively in initiative order, move one's fleet and possibly engage in combat, choose and execute 2 growth actions such as colonizing a planet or researching some technology, trade, then finally score for the round. Players first move their spaceships on the map. Area control is essential, and moving spaceships is required to go colonize planets or to reach enemy fleets and attack them. Combat is deterministic, but there is a fog of war mechanism where you don't necessarily know ahead of time how many ships are in the opponent's fleet. This is done by using face-down chips. For the solo game, I found it anecdotal at best, but I'll get back to that. The winner of a battle might also have to lose some ships, so it's not always a good decision to engage in battle even when you have superior firepower. Once everyone has moved their ships and combats have resolved, the players get to choose 2 growth actions each. This can be to gain a star, research some technology, grow population, build new ships, switch alignment between light and dark side, or change initiative order. I've found that this is the most interesting part of each round, as each of these options seems strategic, rewarding, and of course everything's urgent. If you've suffered losses during a battle, it might be important to get new ships, but you could delay that by 1 more round, capture a star from one of your enemies instead to gain some population, which could give you more ships next round. Or should you research the next military level to ensure your ships are stronger than everyone else's? Tough? crunchy, rewarding choices in the growth phase. After the growth phase, players who are at peace with each other can sometimes trade. This means they both agree to teach each other a technology level and is typically a win-win action. At the end of the round, players score depending on the current era, light or dark, and scoring rules of the scenario. At the end of the last round, an additional endgame scoring happens. There are also secret domination cards for each player, which can grant extra points in-game. So now that you have a general idea of the rules, how about solo gameplay? I'm happy to report that the solo game plays mostly with the same rules as the multiplayer game. You play against two bots, which are controlled by dice rolls. The slavers are generally speaking on the dark side and will tend to go at war with you easily, create as many ships as possible, and try to destroy you. The genetic farmers, on the other hand, tend to be much more peaceful. They're mostly here to trade with you. There are specific rules on how to play these two bots, of course, but in general the solo game of Galactic Era plays like a regular 3-player game. You draw initiative for the 3 players, and when you have to play for one of the bots, you roll their dice and follow the instructions. After a few games, gameplay for the 3 players is smooth enough, but not perfect. I'll get back to that. The main difference is the scoring. The bots don't get a score, only you do, and your goal is to get a high score. I've spent about 10 hours of actual gameplay with Galactic Era by now, and overall I've loved every minute of it. The first thing I think everyone will notice is that this is clearly a love project by the creator. The background book, for example, explains a lot about all the races and how they came to be, and all of that aligns with the specific benefits of each race during gameplay. It transpires that everything possible was done to achieve the designer's vision. Galactic Era might not be for everyone, but for people who crave that kind of gameplay and setting, it could be the perfect gem. The game checks all of the 4X boxes in the right way in my opinion. There's exploration with your spaceships, discovery of new stars and useful alien artifacts, expansion by colonizing these stars, growth of your population, technology research, and of course epic spaceship battles. I think one thing that wasn't obvious to me in my first few sessions, but that later became one of the most important aspects of the game, is how varied it can be thanks to a lot of factors. First, there is the choice of your race, among 16 possibilities. In particular, a few of them stand out with very differentiating pros and cons. For example, one of the races is limited in its robotics technology, meaning their best way to build more ships is to expand their population as quickly as possible. Another, a species that is very bug-like, grows its population twice as fast as others. The Grey, Area 54 types of aliens are good at stealing technology, but cannot easily attack other species. What I initially thought was just a minor early game bonus can actually be very significant and shape your entire strategy. Next, the galactic goal and the galactic story decide how the majority of points will be awarded. They change your objectives and strategy in a critical way. For example, Galactic Journeys rewards you for traveling far away from your home system. Galactic Migrations wants you to conquer other people's star and invest in a technology that other players didn't research. Galactic goals can, for example, give you points for finding lots of ancient alien relics. Your own domination cards also influence what you'll be trying to achieve in the game for points. It doesn't stop there. The switch between light and dark eras at rounds 3 and 7 means you might want to evolve your strategy throughout the game, but you don't necessarily have to do that. Better players than me will probably be planning all rounds ahead of time, but I constantly found myself considering at the last minute whether it was a good time to spend a growth point and switch my race from light to dark, or just keep playing the entire game on one side. And that's because the last and possibly most important layer of choice in the game is the growth phase. With so many possibilities and only 2 you can choose each round, it's always a tough decision, but every option feels like a mini Christmas day, as it brings you more population, or more ships, or better technology. You have to plan carefully which technology track you want to research, thinking of the possibility of future trades with the genetic farmers as well. In solo play, all of this variety helps to compensate for the fact that the AI enemy's strategy is always more or less the same, and it also helps creating some thematic story in your head. My monkey aliens are a bit primitive. They can't build proper ships, so they have to expand throughout the galaxy to win with numbers versus better technology. At the end of the day, you are competing against your own best score, but the journey to get there is exciting and challenging. I always feel like I'm waking up mid-game, realizing I've spent my time having fun battling the slavers instead of trying to maximize my victory points. A game that achieves to make me forget about its goal and having me captivated instead by the journey to get there is a very well-made game in my book. As I looked through the top 200 solo board games on Board Game Geek from last year, I found only one 4X game, Space Empires 4X. I'm thinking that with only one 4X solo game in the top 200, there's definitely room for some healthy competition. Galactic Era brings multiple ideas that make it a worthy addition to the genre. First of all, the solo game really feels like a multiplayer game. Although the AI rules aren't perfect, I was surprised at how well they worked, the slavers in particular. One clever bit here is their sideboard, which gives them extra powers if their action didn't yield any successful result. This is a very efficient way to balance some of the randomness of the dice. so it feels like you're playing the real game against okay opponents. I insist on the real game aspect here, by comparison to a game such as Size, where the AI player doesn't play by the regular rules, which to me felt like a cop-out. I really appreciate that Galactic Era gets me to experience 100% of its actual gameplay against an AI that plays by the rules. The deterministic aspect of the battles also works very well in Galactic Era, in my opinion. Finally, the Light and Dark Era system is original and really influences how the game plays. In terms of game mechanics, this works by rewarding you more for actions that match the current era. I could also see how this philosophy cleanly aligns with gameplay in my last 2 rounds against the Slavers AI, and how these guys didn't evolve while you the player did. War is over, it's time to think about the endgame. How to squeeze one last technological research point at the last minute. Why are these barbaric slavers still trying to fight? Galactic Era isn't without flaws. Although I've mostly had a great time with the game, here are a few issues I found with it. Interaction with the ship pieces was by far my biggest issue with Galactic Era. I've mentioned it in the components section, but the plastic miniatures representing your ships don't look good. They look cheap. I understand that making them look better would probably require larger miniatures, increasing cost as well as the map size. Speaking of the map, it feels tiny, in particular because of the ship's issues mentioned above. Making the map bigger might have been an option, but then the game's table footprint would also increase, which isn't great because it's already quite huge. Maybe there's no good solution here. The fiddliness of interacting with the ship pieces on the map doesn't stop with the ships. To represent fleets with large numbers of ships and to handle fog of war, Galactic Era lets you stack chips in a plastic container. During a battle, you have to reveal those chips to count the actual power of each army. In solo games, I found this kind of manipulation annoying, sometimes frustrating. The pieces manage to be simultaneously too big for the map and too small to handle. Generally speaking, I have found that handling large numbers of ships was cumbersome, to the point that destroying ships, even mine, always feels great, because that means less complexity for next round. In the game's defense, that only becomes a problem toward the second half of the game when fleets become significant. Moving on to smaller issues, the game has a lot of icons and they are tough to remember. The scoring ones in particular, on the Galactic Story, Galactic Goals and Domination cards, might as well not be there at all, as I can pretty much guarantee that you'll prefer to refer to the rulebook than try to figure out if you got the icons right. Another small issue is the anecdotal aspect of Fog of War in solo player. The Fog of War mechanic is probably super fun in multiplayer games of Galactic Era, but in a solo game, you know exactly how many ships are in each fleet of the AI. The nature of the opponent's fleets remain however hidden, so at least there's that. It's not a big deal, simply a bluffing aspect of the multiplayer game that of course cannot really be replicated in solo. Yet another minor issue, I did find that there are a lot of extra rules to remember, in particular for the solo game. Each AI bot has its own set of rules. Additional rules for combat evasion, for declaring war or peace, for building fleets. In some cases the AI needs to ignore a dice roll and force it to be a 6 instead. On top of that, the slavers have their additional power board, which adds another layer of rules. All of this serves to make the AI play correctly against you, and generally speaking this works okay, but despite that there are still cases where the AI will do something a human player clearly wouldn't do. The genetic farmers in particular have a tendency to just jump right into the space of their enemies, even if it means they will get annihilated. I didn't see anything in the rules that prevents that. If we're going with a bunch of exceptions in the rules anyway, why not add a safeguard for that? Lastly, I could also mention that the setup time is a bit on the long end, I would say 15 minutes at least to set up a solo game from scratch, but given that each session gives you 90 minutes of gameplay, I think that remains fair. One of the questions one might ask is if Galactic Era is good enough if you're exclusively a solo gamer. Ignoring the price for a minute, I would say definitely yes. Unless you have no interest in the 4X genre as a solo gamer, I really feel this game fills a void for solitaire. In my opinion, it has enough variety to keep you replaying many times, and I would say there's at least 25 hours of gameplay in the box before you've seen all the content and tried all species and galactic goals. By then it becomes a question of actually improving your score. I'm personally not really into high scores, but here again there's a lot of room for growth. After 6 games, I only managed to score at the second lowest level out of 5 in easy mode. Now, bringing the cost back into the picture, if you can find it for $80 or less, I would definitely tell you that Galactic Era is worth it for solo gamers no matter what. At the time of this review though, it seems retail price is closer to $150, and at that price point I would say it's up to personal attraction for the 4X and space exploration genres. In conclusion, Galactic Era is a great 4X that fills a void in the solo gaming world. It's clearly a work of passion by the designer, and that shows in every aspect of the game. As far as the solo game is concerned, I feel that Galactic Era's solo mode stands stands on its own as a great solitaire game. If you can find people to play it multiplayer with you, great, but if you're looking for a great 4X solo game with a space exploration theme, great strategy, space battles and technology research, I think this is a brilliant choice. I honestly think the only reason this game hasn't made it to the top solo board games on BGG yet is because of lack of awareness. I hope I was able to show you both good and bad aspects of the game. If you enjoy this kind of independent review, please like and subscribe, and of course let me know in the comments if I missed anything or if you disagree with me. See you next time.